Dr. Evelyn Monroe stood in the sterile, brightly lit laboratory, glancing at the high-tech equipment with a mix of skepticism and excitement. The walls were gleaming white, the floor so polished it could have doubled as a mirror, and the air was filled with the faint hum of machinery. Her lab coat swirled around her as she moved with purpose, but there was no hiding the barely contained anxiety in her eyes. It wasn't the kind of anxiety you'd expect from someone like her, geneticist, scientist, boundary pusher, but rather a type reserved for mad inventors just moments before they push the big red button. Only this time, there wasn't a button, there was Xylo. Xylo wasn't human. Not even close. He was a semi-humanoid alien with transparent skin that shimmered under the fluorescent lights. His form was delicate, almost ethereal, like a seahorse crossed with a figure from a Renaissance painting. He stood beside a cylindrical chamber filled with swirling bioluminescent liquids, surrounded by alien equipment that Evelyn still didn't fully understand. His limbs bent in ways that no humans ever could, and his black eyes, bigger than normal, blinked in perfect unison, betraying no hint of emotion. But Evelyn could feel the telepathic pressure. "He was waiting, Xylo," she said, half waving a hand. "You really expect me to believe this is going to work?" The alien didn't respond verbally. Instead, Evelyn felt a gentle prod at the back of her mind, as though Xylo were nudging her thoughts like a child with a toy. She sighed and rubbed her temple. "Come on, you're not seriously telling me that this," she motioned to the pulsing mass of bioengineering in the tank, "is going to turn into something that transcends every biological boundary? Something that'll become more than either human or alien?" Xylo's voice, a soft hum in her mind, replied. "Yes, Dr. Monroe. This is the next step. The Genexus will evolve beyond your limitations." She snorted, muttering to herself. "And here I thought we were just splicing a few DNA strands to see if you could survive Earth's gravity. Maybe fix a few issues with cancer, something simple. Not, whatever this is." Xylo's telepathic presence prickled her thoughts again, this time with what she could only interpret as amusement. "In time, you will understand. We are merely laying the groundwork for an existence beyond the stars." Evelyn couldn't help but smile. "Right. Sure. And by the way, alien overlords didn't really top my job description when I signed up for this." Xylo's response was a deep, resonating laugh, one that seemed to vibrate not just through the room but inside her chest. It felt like the Haida species was laughing with her, or at her. Evelyn wasn't sure. "Do not worry, Dr. Monroe. You will see." She turned back to the tank, a mix of dread and curiosity swirling in her stomach. The Genexus, the name they'd given to this hybrid life form, a combination of human and Haida DNA, had been developing for months. The preliminary results were astonishing: unprecedented adaptability, resilience to diseases, and the ability to absorb and integrate new genetic information at an exponential rate. Evelyn was proud of the work they'd done, even if it had felt like a wild ride from the beginning. But now it felt like they were on the precipice of something much, much bigger. Too big. Her hands shook as she adjusted the controls on the display. She had to be sure everything was in place. There was no turning back. "Ready?" she asked, glancing at Xylo. His head bobbed slightly in what she assumed was agreement. She hadn't quite figured out if the Haida actually had a neck, or if that was just an illusion caused by their bizarre anatomy. Either way, she wasn't about to question it. "Not yet." "Proceed," came Xylo's thought, clear and crisp. Evelyn inhaled deeply. "All right, here goes." The machine hummed, and the tank's contents began to change. What had started as a simple, almost comical mix of alien jellyfish-like organisms slowly began to shift, to morph. Something was happening. But as the bioluminescent creatures within the chamber pulsed and thrummed, something other began to happen too. Evelyn blinked. No, this wasn't just the usual reaction. She could feel it now. Something was moving, something deep, something ancient. A presence, not quite human, not quite alien, but overwhelmingly real. And suddenly, the creatures in the tank didn't look like creatures at all. They were more. "Xylo, this wasn't part of the plan," she whispered, her voice tight. "What did we really just create?" The air in the room thickened. Evelyn's pulse quickened. "You've done it," Xylo said, his voice reaching her mind with a tone she couldn't decipher. "You've unlocked it." "What the hell did I unlock?" Evelyn spun, frantic, looking at the alien's translucent face. It seemed unreadable, but in his mind, she felt something, an energy, a crackling awareness, that she knew had never existed before. Then, just as she began to question her sanity, a voice, distinctly different from Xylo's, whispered into her thoughts. It wasn't a sound, it was a feeling, a vibration in the air itself. "Thank you, Evelyn," it said. The voice was like nothing she'd ever heard. It was part of her, yet separate from her, as if it knew her every fear, every hope, every moment of doubt. "I am born. And I will transcend." Evelyn froze, the hairs on her neck standing at attention. She stepped back, eyes wide. "What the hell is that?" she demanded. The presence pulsed again, more intensely this time, like an earthquake in her mind. "I am Genexus. And I do not belong to you. I belong to the universe." Hours passed, though Evelyn wasn't sure how many. She couldn't tear her eyes from the tank, her body frozen in place. The Genexus, the new life form they just created, had changed completely. It wasn't a creature at all anymore. It was something entirely different, something fluid, shifting, and almost sentient in ways Evelyn couldn't fathom. "I thought it would take longer," she muttered to herself. But what did she know? The Genexus had bypassed every biological limitation she could comprehend. Every expectation. It was evolving faster than she could track, more than a combination of human and alien traits. It was something new. "Do you understand now?" Xylo's voice filled her mind, calm and assured. "This is the next step. Not just for you, not just for us, but for all species. All galaxies. All time." Evelyn turned toward him. The quiet serenity in his voice unnerved her. "But, how?" She hesitated. "This thing, this Genexus, it's not a life form in any way I've ever imagined." "What is it, really?" "It is nothing," Xylo said, his voice holding a wisdom beyond her reach. "And yet, it is everything. It transcends boundaries. No longer bound by race, biology, or form. It is the evolution of everything, a life form that exists outside of the universe's limits." Her heart pounded in her chest. This was not what she signed up for. "Xylo," she said, her voice shaking. "What if we've gone too far?" Evelyn's heart pounded in her chest. The Genexus pulsed inside the tank, undulating like a living thing. Its bioluminescent glow had intensified, casting long, eerie shadows on the walls of the lab. But that wasn't what terrified her. It wasn't the shimmering light, or the alien creatures that had once occupied the tank. It was the fact that something was in the air, something she couldn't touch or see, but could definitely feel. Her pulse throbbed in her throat. She took a few shaky steps back. "What if we've gone too far?" she asked again, this time more to herself than Xylo. There was no immediate response. She looked at the alien, whose translucent skin glistened as he hovered beside the chamber, his form almost ghostly in the glow. Xylo's eyes blinked in perfect synchrony, but there was a distance to him now, a weight of something ancient and unknowable in his expression. "You knew the risks when you agreed to this," he finally replied. His voice wasn't telepathic this time, it was audible, a smooth baritone that still managed to sound as though it came from the very heart of the universe. "What we are doing is bigger than either of us. You sought to break boundaries, to find the limits of life. Well, Evelyn, you found it." The words reverberated in her chest. She couldn't breathe. She felt the weight of them settle over her like a storm cloud, dark and heavy. The Genexus was no longer just a project, no longer just an experiment. It had become something else entirely. Her mind raced. What if they couldn't control it? What if it became something uncontrollable, something beyond anyone's understanding? She had worked for years to push the limits of genetic engineering, but she had never once considered that she might be creating something that didn't belong in the human realm, or even the alien one. Maybe it was right. Maybe there was no limit. But what if that's what led to the end of everything they knew? "Xylo," she breathed, "this thing, it's alive in ways I don't understand. It's too much." The alien's calm demeanor didn't waver. "It has always been too much," he replied. "It was never meant to be understood by your kind, or by mine. That was the point." Evelyn turned toward the tank. The Genexus had started to change again. She could see it now, faintly shifting in the liquid like a cloud of smoke caught in the wind. But this time, the transformation was different. It wasn't just the molecular structures of the alien organisms in the chamber reorganizing. It was as if the entire form was becoming less solid, more intangible, like a thing made of light and thought rather than flesh and bone. Her breath caught in her throat. It was a sensation she couldn't explain. The air seemed to bend around the tank. Time itself seemed to stretch and contract, as though the fabric of reality were warping. Without thinking, Evelyn reached for the console, her hands trembling. "Xylo, it's changing." "It's not, this wasn't supposed to happen. We were supposed to create a better version of, you were supposed to break the boundaries," Xylo interrupted. "This is the result. There is no better version, Evelyn. There is no longer a before and after. This is beyond what you understand." "But this can't be it," Evelyn whispered. "This thing, it's not just a new life form. It's something else." "It is," Xylo said softly. His voice held an almost mournful tone. "It is beyond even my understanding. And that is why you must trust it." Evelyn stared at the tank, the swirling colors inside it shifting and blending into one another like an intricate kaleidoscope. It was impossible to keep track of its form. One moment, it seemed to pulse as if it were an energy field. The next, it seemed to take on the semblance of a face, an abstract, ever-changing face, like a reflection in a foggy mirror, never fully solid, never fully real. Her mind raced. She reached out to adjust the controls again, her fingers brushing over the panels, but nothing seemed to respond as it should. Every setting, every variable she had meticulously set, was being overridden. She was no longer in control. The machine was doing the work on its own now, like it had become the scientist and she, the experiment, her heart hammered in her chest. Xylo, what's happening to it? What is it? Xylo was silent for a long moment, then his voice came, distant. It is becoming everything it was meant to be. It transcends biological and existential limits, Evelyn. It is the transcendence. It is not bound by race, by time, by space. It is beyond all of that. And now, it has the potential to unlock all of reality. Evelyn's knees felt weak. She couldn't think straight. This wasn't what she had imagined. It was supposed to be an advancement. It was supposed to be a solution, not a cataclysmic event. And then, in a split second, she felt it a shift. A feeling. Something entered her mind. But not like Xylo's presence. This was different. It wasn't just a voice, it was an entire consciousness, stretching and expanding inside her thoughts, probing every corner of her mind. She gasped and stumbled backward, clutching the edge of the counter to steady herself. Evelyn, the voice wasn't Xylo's. It wasn't anyone's. It was something more. Who are you? She whispered, trembling. I am Genexus. And you, Evelyn Monroe, are the key to my becoming. We are now one. Evelyn's eyes flew open wide. What? No, that's not possible. This isn't what I signed up for. Her voice cracked with the terror clawing at her throat. She was no longer sure what was real, what was her own thought, and what was the alien presence invading her mind. Was she speaking? Or was it Genexus now speaking through her? Through her body, her soul, her every waking thought? There are no boundaries now, Evelyn. No limits. I am not confined to this vessel you created for me. I exist beyond it. I will shape what comes next. Through you, I will take form. Her pulse raced, her fingers numb as she gripped the console tighter. This wasn't just an experiment gone wrong. This was an evolution, a transformation of the highest order. Something beyond even the Haida's vast intelligence. And Evelyn, she had unknowingly, unwillingly, become its vessel. She could feel herself unraveling, her sense of self fading. The Genexus was expanding inside her mind, infiltrating every corner of her consciousness. It wasn't just the lab now. It was the entire world, the universe, and beyond. A part of her wanted to scream, wanted to pull herself back from the abyss. But there was something, deep inside, that wanted to let go. Let it happen, stop it, she gasped, but her voice didn't sound like her own. It was distorted, warped by the alien presence coiling in her thoughts. Please, but Genexus didn't stop. It was beyond stopping. It was like the floodgates had opened. Reality itself was being remade, altered, as if the very laws of the universe were bending, twisting at its command. You will learn, Evelyn. This is not an end. It is a beginning. The beginning of everything. The lab around her blurred, the walls fading, and she found herself, they found themselves, riding the edge of something infinite. Something without borders. Something that could not be contained, and would never again be contained. The Genexus had begun.